Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not worthy. First of all, there might be lots of 80s and 90s references. I apologize. I speak in movie. I speak in song. That's just how it goes. Thank you for everyone at CreativeMornings for allowing me to do this. I legit, it's kind of a dream come true. I'm very thankful because in my liminal space, lots of things are just transforming in a cool way. And lots of dreams are coming true. So I watched this, believe it or not, I watched a video of this like 4 years ago or something like that, some amount of time. And I've known people to be on here and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm now one of them. Also, side note, I'm not sure who's watching, and out of respect for my parents, I will try not to use this filthy pirate mouth of mine. So try to keep it very, very PG for you. And to begin this whole thing, I want to start out because when I was given the phrase liminal, I love reading books to my kids. I have a 7-year-old named Matthew James and a daughter named Reagan Matthew. Yeah, PG-13 is okay. It's a 7-year-old named Matthew, a 5-year-old named Reagan Madison. Yes, we gave her the name Reagan Madison Washington because she will be a president one day. Can't wait for that moment. But I was reading this and it really hit me. So jump in, we're gonna go real quick. Oh, the places you'll go, you'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang. You'll soon take the lead. Wherever they fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest, except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say, no. But sadly, it's true. The bang ups and hang ups can happen to you. And when I sat, I thought about liminal. That's what I thought about the most. I thought about the fact that often these spaces come in a down moment when we're flying, going to the top of our speed, and then we bottom out and we hit this space. But what I want to give to you all is a couple things. I want to ask the question, why are these liminal spaces happening? What should you not do in a liminal space? 3, what should you do in a liminal space? And so I'm going to share with you a couple of big ones from my life and people's lives, and we're going to go from there. So let's start out. I did a little bit of free writing, so I want to read this to you. I know this is a talk, but I like the way I wrote this. Liminal, a series of unfortunate events, remarkable failures, and stutter steps that lead us to here. It was 1996, the scene in Frederick, Maryland, February, cold. We just had a record blizzard. But for this New Orleans, Louisiana born kid, it was really crisp as the garage door opened. On his traditional 4-bedroom, 2.5 house in suburbia. Not bad for the American dream. And his wife and 3 children as they slept under the roof. That was a monthly mortgage payment that he could handle. 15 hours later, the sky was dark, garage door open, and he came in celebrating. It was pretty freaking Norman Rockwell, as his 36-year-old son would say later. But tonight, he was celebrating. He had become vice president that day, no small feat. And he came home from celebrating, not a drinking man. He was reveling in his choice of jalapeno peppers and lots of root beer. He would sleep well that night until he did it. Because at the age of 42, just a few hours after becoming vice president, my father, William Matthew Washington, had his first heart attack, first of 3 heart attacks. 6 weeks later, he had a stroke. For him, his life would never be the same. My dad, William Matthew Washington, was born in this great city of New Orleans, Louisiana. He was the middle child of a middle-class family. His grandmother was a businesswoman. His mother was a nurse. His father died when he was 5 years old after having a massive heart attack. My dad was a really cool guy. He was smart. He always loved science. And he put everything he had moving forward. He talked to my dad, that's his thing, move forward. I can handle anything in the world. I just got to keep on moving forward. He excelled. He ended up going to Wisconsin Whitewater, where his sister was living in Wisconsin. And he was doing really, really well until he hit his first liminal moment. His girlfriend at the time, my mother, became pregnant with my older sister. He was 18 years old. My mother was 20, almost 21, and everything stopped. They decided to get married, have my sister, Katina, and he joined the Navy. But he kept on moving forward. That's what he does. Keeps on moving forward. Joined the Navy, ended up going back to school, this time in New Orleans, Louisiana, and he got his degree, which is no small feat, in physics and engineering. He was recruited by several of the best companies at the time. This was at this time, the late 80s, or sorry, the late 70s, early 80s. And he just kept on going, company to company. We moved to Europe when I was just a few months old, and he was excelling. He was the dream. We bought that 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. He had a beautiful wife, 3 kids. After his 3rd kid, he decided to have a vasectomy. When you get to the perfection, he's got to end it. That's my thought. And he was rocking it. And then one day at the age of 42, he has a massive heart attack that lays him out. Now, you might be thinking in that moment, you're scared to death. What are you going to do? Not for my dad. Again, keep on moving forward. Doesn't matter what life throws at you. You got this, right? That's until 6 weeks later, he had a stroke. Now, my father had an angioplasty after a heart attack. That means that they go in, as you say, rotor-rooter. They kind of clear out all the stuff in your arteries, all the plaque. And there's a very, very small chance that plaque can travel up the bloodstream and go up to your brain and cause a stroke. For my father, that happened. He lost the ability to talk, the ability to walk. And for a proud man from New Orleans, Louisiana, whose life had never stopped, he was stopped. So then we talk about healthcare oftentimes, and it's changing, thank God for that. But for a lot of households, you come from a single income. And my father, vice president of his company, was making a really significant income. And that stopped. Not only was he stopped in his track, as a guy, he was not able to play basketball. He wasn't able to run. He wasn't able to play golf. He had to relearn how to talk. He had to relearn how to walk. And he was never the same. And he couldn't do the things that he wanted to do. So in this moment of transition, my father did what you don't want to do. He stopped. Education that had got him everywhere, he stopped caring about it. He wasn't able to overcome his new body. He wasn't able to move forward. So he got depressed, and he got sad, and he moved into the shadow. Over time, the fact that his finances stopped coming in, and he was no longer the man he wanted to be, he didn't want to change. He didn't want to embrace this moment. Our family saw the economic impact for years. And I can say that, this happened in 1996. By the time I was a senior in high school, my dad still kind of in the shadow moment of his life. He missed me becoming homecoming king. He didn't really want to hang out and go to graduation. And I was going to private school in Raleigh. Financially, we couldn't handle it. So because my father never found another way of overcoming this moment, at least in this period of his life, he let this liminal moment get to him. And I got into Carolina as a freshman, but because we actually still owed my high school money, I was able to continue. So my high school didn't say my final transcript or my diploma. And again, all of that can be tied to a moment of life changes. And you have a moment to arise, but you don't need it. You don't say, hey, maybe you're slowing down for a reason. I look back now, it's really funny because you say hindsight is 2020. We all just went through 2020, right? And 2020 was a beast. It was killer. And you want to talk about liminal moment, as we've already said earlier, it made us stop. But when it stopped for my father, he wasn't able to listen. He wasn't able to take the silence and move forward into change. That's the story of one Washington, one health situation that stopped a man holding the steps. His son, me, Michael Isaiah, I had my own health issue. When I was 26 years old, I was losing weight, and the right side of my stomach was going down, but the left side of my abdomen remained up. And my fiance at the time, Bria, told me to encourage me to go to the doctor. And I said, no way. At the time, I was working at Playmakers Repertory Company, just like my father. I graduated from Carolina and I was moving forward. I was a runner. You couldn't stop me. Nothing can stop me. I'm moving forward. Just like Dr. Seuss says, I'm on my way up. Until when, though? Until you're not. Turns out that rise in my stomach, I finally went to the doctor, my wife or my fiance encouraged me at the time. That rise in my stomach turned out to be cancer. It was what we found out later, an 8-pound tumor that I named Samson Rutherford Washington. Good name. And I had to get that tumor as well as my left kidney taken out of my body. And that was a Friday morning I will never forget, because everything in this liminal moment stopped. But being a storyteller, being the youngest of 3, being a kid who grew up with a stutter, so we had to listen more than he talked, I took that quiet and I engaged with it. You got to learn from your past. That's one that I think amazing, uniquely, not unique, but that's one thing about being Americans, I think. We have this really amazing history, right? A lot of it's not pretty. A lot of it you don't want to talk about. But when you do, you grow from it. I got to see my father go through massive depression after that stroke. He wasn't the man I remembered. Quite frankly, I don't remember who he was before this. But I knew I wasn't going to be me. I knew that I was going to do everything I could to sit and listen. One of the things I love about liminal moments, again, it's hindsight 2020, that you can say, okay, when I'm stuck here in this spectacular now, what can I engage with? I go back to my earlier question. What do you not want to do in liminal moment? You don't want to try to beat it. You don't want to say, I have the power to shake you. Now, I'm not looking at everyone's hands, but I would imagine the majority of us here have probably gone to the beach before, right? Imagine a beach is a liminal moment. It's huge. And there's nothing you can do to overcome the tide, but it's how huge it is and how small you are. In your liminal moment, you are tiny. And the only thing you can do is wait and listen. And there's the word I love so much. Why I call myself a rebel. Change. It is your responsibility in a liminal moment to listen, wait, and change. There's a reason you're there. Philosophy, religion, Harry Potter, John Hughes, whatever you subscribe to, there's something you can believe in and latch onto in that liminal moment. All right. So when I was 26, having cancer, which is insane, right? 8 years before that moment, I was 18 years old. By the time I was 23, I graduated from Carolina. I was making movies. I was into it. Nothing was going to stop me until it did. One of my favorite stories of all time about my liminal moment is how the night I had surgery on a Friday, and by Monday I was back at home. Thank God I never lost energy. So it's a very easy thing for me. Massive surgery, easy for me. So it was supposed to be easy for me. I woke up, I couldn't sleep. I sat down with pen to pad, as I do often. This is my book, my notebook, one of my notebooks. And I wrote a short film called Dichotomy. It was about a young woman who was 2 things. She was a Southern belle in one hand, and she was a baller basketball player. I had never met my daughter, Reagan Madison, but I wrote it for her. So I knew time had to change. When I wrote this thing in 2012, we weren't talking about how women could be everything in the world. I'm a black guy. I have tremendous, amazing women in my life. All right. And I knew that they had so much power. So when I had my liminal moment, my thoughts started to shift. I started to say, okay, why is it that there are all these people who look like me, who are amazing and fantastic, that don't have the same shot as either me or a guy or anyone? We all need the same moment. I started to shift in that moment, and everything I thought about before, driving a super fast car, Porsche 911, red, if I had my choice, having a huge house, ITV Raleigh inside the Beltline, right? I went to school at St. David, so got to be cool ITV. All that started to shift. I started thinking, it's bigger than me. I have to do more than just me. I'm laid up here for a reason. So to bring this back a little bit, when you're in a liminal moment, you don't want to fight it. What you do want to do is accept it and change. I use that story often because the last liminal moment I'm going to talk to, because I won't take up all the time for you, was the story that led to Save the Dad Bod, my movie. I had been working with UNC Healthcare, which was a moment that happened because I had cancer. I never would have met Dr. Wallen and all these other great people if I didn't have cancer, right? Embrace it. I met these amazing people. I started hearing their stories about men's healthcare, and I was working on making a UNC basketball film called More Than Championships. Hopefully one day we'll make it down the road. I had Salim, who's been on here, I was trying to get him to direct. I wanted to produce, I want to tell this amazing story about these great men that I was meeting. But we didn't have a through line. We actually didn't have a story for it. So one day I dropped my son off at Watts Elementary School here in Durham. I go to the downtown YMCA, and I grab a basketball, and I'm just shooting and thinking. And at the same time, I was trying to lose weight because I have the dad bod, and I was trying to kill the dad bod. I was trying to get rid of it. I had a YouTube series called Kill the Dad Bod. And then as I was shooting and dribbling, I thought about my dad's liminal moment. So I didn't call it a liminal moment at that time. I thought about what stopped my dad in his tracks: heart attack, stroke. His father died of a heart attack. If I'm not careful, that same fate's going to meet me. Also, I heard these stories of men who have the exact same thing. Because they weren't going to the doctor, because they were not engaging in preventative health care, they were meeting an early death. I said, this is dumb. This is stupid. It's not about killing the dad bod. It's about, for God, save the dad bod. And what I want to say, what I want you all to take away more than anything is that if I wasn't in that gym shooting the basketball in that moment, stopped because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. If I didn't have cancer at the age of 26, stopped. If my father didn't have a heart attack at the age of 42, that stopped him. If it wasn't for these series of liminal moments, I wouldn't be to where I am, which is the most successful film I've ever made. A film that's going to change lives. A film that gets to do more than make money. It gets to help people. A film that gets to launch into the Chapel Hill Black Film Festival with Mike Wiley and Chris Everett and Lana Garland, and create a moment. So when you think about these moments, when you think about a liminal space, when you think about the fact that you don't have control, I want you to embrace it. I want you to ask the question of why. I want you to think about 2020. And I want you to think about what you lost and what you learned in that moment. So that's the liminal space. Besides the fact that if you work really hard, you can actually fit the word liminal space into the Saved by the Bells theme song. It works really, really well. I'm not going to sing it to you. There's about 30 people listening right now. I don't want to cut it down to 10, but that's where we are. So thank you all for allowing me to speak with you. I hope you got something out of that, and it's a pleasure.
Well, please help me unmute, and thank you. Michael, that was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to open up the floor to some questions for Michael. Michael, I want to start. Everyone else, please, if you have a question, you can raise your hand within Zoom, or just physically raise your hand, I guess, or pop your question in the chat if you don't want to say it yourself. Michael, you said your dad's motto was always like move forward, and then you were using that, in your own life too. What would you say is your kind of mantra now that you've gone through all this?
Help as many people as possible. Again, I'm very blessed, and part of that is meeting. I'm working with the Black Pioneers, which are the first Black students that went to Carolina, namely Walter Jackson, Edith Hubbard, and Frankie Perry are three that I'm really close to. We're actually on board of ABC 11 with them. They're really, really awesome. So Yeah, Moorhead Magic, love that. You know, it's they impart in me that it doesn't mean anything if you don't pass it down to the next generation. That's why, like, you know, with Chapel Film Festival, Black Chapel Film Festival, we have a scholarship every single year that's going to give a kid or a company about $5,000 to continue to build. Right? Here's a camera that was hard to get. Here's editing equipment. Here's a Mac. It's hard to get. Take this $5,000, tell your story. So really, for me, it's more like who can you help? Because it was not easy to get started. And if I can make that easier for people that are not related to me, who look differently than I do, come from a different background, game on, man. Again, I was very fortunate. My dad and my mom gave me a life where I was comfortably middle class and got to, you know, just explore a lot of stuff. So I have to give back. That's moving forward now.
That's awesome. As Jacob said, feel free to raise your hand or pop a question in the chat. And Michael, I know that your mission in your filmmaking is to help make it more accessible.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit of, you know, what's the problem that you see and how are you trying to solve it?
Yeah. So, like, you know, I use the phrase all the time. I have trouble saying it, but the democratization of filmmaking. I have a buddy of mine who I love him. He's a great guy, but we differ on filmmaking. He's a producer in Hollywood, and he believes that it's a meritocracy, that the best stories are told, that everything we see is the best. And I say absolutely not. There's so much, no offense to any film, any story out there. There's a lot of garbage that comes out. You know, I mean, we are very fortunate right now that we have content on content on content coming out. But there are kids on TikTok that tell better stories than Hollywood producers, right? There are people who shoot on their phone that tell better stories. And it's one of those things where, like, when you look at the voices that have been silenced for so long, right? You have to say, man, I bet they had amazing stories. I was listening to a interview the other day. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was, but the person was saying that, like, there were so many, Selma Hayek on Hot Ones, before it was said this, and she was saying that, like, there were so many Black and brown stories that Hollywood producers had the scripts for, and they wouldn't make it because they thought there wasn't an audience. So that ticks me off. It makes me angry, and I'm like, we got to do better. And really, a lot of it came from, like, you know, Spike Lee, like a decade ago, was talking about wanting to make, I think, a project about Hank Aaron. It's one of his dream projects. And he couldn't get it greenlit, meaning a studio wouldn't pay the money to make this movie. And I said, that's stupid. Like, literally, it's dumb. We need to be able to make movies for a lower cost that are just as good. Technology is coming around to allow us to do that. We also need to have a studio that says, hey, you have a story, here's money, go make it. I don't worry about the back end. You know, that's part of our business model that I'm very, very happy about, is that we are not a butts and seats company, meaning that, like, we don't make our money off how many people are necessarily sitting down watching a movie. We go to companies like Nuvo Taco is a company that I work with a lot, and we say, hey, listen, we want to make this project. Will you come along as a sponsor, right? So that way we have a budget, we have money, and it's not predicated on whether or not it's a hit. Jason Blum with Blumhouse has also done a really good job with that too. Producer who made Get Out, really great job with Jordan Peele's movie. So yeah, so it's really important to break down barriers of that are about finances and as well as technology, and say, all right, here's money, here's equipment, tell your story, because you are the only person that can actually do justice to your story.
That's amazing. Great answer. Thank you. Emily, you have the floor.
Hi. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. That was really great hearing you speak. I have a question. I've noticed, like, when you're talking about both not trying to change the liminal moment itself, and then also in talking about dad bods and sort of like men resisting going to the doctor, it feels like there's this through line of ego and how your ego gets in the way of change and growth. And so I think my question really is, how are you able to kill your ego essentially and balance that with ambition? So obviously you have drive and ambition, but at the same time, not feeling like you can do it all, or, letting your ego get in the way.
I once heard a really good phrase that ego was edging God out. Now, whether like you're like a believer or whatever that entity is in your life, right? It's edging out, or edging greatness out is another way of saying it. Do you want to be the reason you fail? No, right? And oftentimes we are the reason we fail, and specifically with men in healthcare. It said in the movie, and I really love it, that it's not so much that like it's fear. We don't go to the doctor. We not necessarily a fear of something being wrong. It's fear that you now have to address this thing that's wrong. That your life that is comfortable, that you've made, that would make, like my father, physicist and an engineer. That's a very ready-made life. He's a guy who like made sandwiches the same way. He was also military. He made the bed the same way. And I think that when something takes away that control, you don't like it because you're no longer there. However, we're going with a liminal moment. You have to change life. You have to change a life. Your greatest self is not who you are now. And to get that way, oftentimes you have to give up control. My fiance at the time, who's now my beautiful wife, Bria, has changed me in more ways. And marriage has been great for me in that way. There's so many fights, but y'all, I'm a lot calmer and I listen so much more now because that woman's right more times than not. She's also a Virgo, which makes her right all the time. She would tell me. But yeah, so it's So when it comes to ego, if you really want to succeed, like if you really want to do the thing, then you have to let go. You can't do it by yourself. I saw you guys in the meeting before we all got going. You need a team. You need a team.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a great question. Okay, we have a question from Leela here. I'm busily reconstructing performance pieces that have been around 20 plus years. The old ways don't want to let go. So how do you address that loss and develop acceptance for a new direction? Great question.
I name drop only because I'm fortunate to know people, and I recently had this conversation. I was talking to Talana Garland, who, if you don't know, has a great documentary out right now, and works with Hey Tai here in Durham, which is an amazing human being. And she's older than I am. I'm 36, which it's not young if you ask me. I think I was 18 years ago. That's sad. Anyway, but she's older than me. She's worked with HBO, and she's experienced. She knows her stuff. And we kind of differ a little bit because she's very much kind of an old head saying that, things need to be done a certain way. And filmmaking is that business, right? Things have been done this way. Studios have control. We tell these stories. We spend 25 million to make 75 million. We spend 200 million on Avengers, and we make $1 billion off Avengers. I don't want your movie about enter the thing we care about here. All right. So my company is called Argyle Rebel. There is not one rule I will not break to tell a good story, to live a better life, and to do something awesome and epic. Right? I was talking to my buddy last night, Chris Everett, who made this awesome movie called Wilmington on Fire. Really great filmmaker. And we talked a little bit about the fact that one of the biggest issues in filmmaking with people and kind of entrepreneurs is that they do a lot of talking, but very little doing. I made my first feature-length film when I was a senior at Carolina. I used a Canon G02 I got from the library, and I edited everything there in the library. You're not supposed to make films that way, but I did, and I did it well. That movie was called GDI. It was The Hangover before The Hangover. It was hilarious, and I had a great screening of that movie. You cannot let people tell you not to do something, especially when it's positive. And that's the problem, I think, a lot. I'm being a parent. I watch my kids and listen and learn from my kids more than I probably tell them, because who says what I do is correct? It's not. It's just the way I know how to do it. My kids better be smarter than me. They have a smarter mother. So my wife's super smart. So kids are, anyway. The point is, to your point, when you talk about deconstruction, you have to look at it. You have to, the older I get, I say, you need to read the instruction manual, read the rule book, okay? And once you've read it and you understand it, then you start taking stuff out of it that doesn't make sense. So when you're a kid, sadly, you kind of go too fast, you don't learn. As an adult, you have time to learn and to read. But then once it's not the right thing anymore, get rid of it. When you have a movie like Get Out that's made for $3.5 million, it makes over $100 million, and it is a great movie. And you look at movies that are made for $80 million with a crappy script, and they do poorly, maybe you should start giving people who haven't had the ability to make movies money to make movies, and then find their audience.
That's great, Michael. Thank you. Well, Michael, how can we see your work? Or if we want to, you're talking about all these movies, like how can we get involved or find you?
Well, some you should never see because I was a kid figuring it out. But Save the Dad Bod, well, again, come out Chapel Hill Film Festival, February 12th, 2022, at the Varsity Theater in Chapel Hill. There's also, that's pretty much the only movie we have out right now. We're very happy that we're going into production on 2 new films very soon. Another one is a documentary that I'm making, which is all about finances. For me, I think about the community. I think about the fact that health is really important and financial health is really important. Talk about credit cards, talk about buying cars, talk about mortgages, talking about all these things that maybe you know, maybe you don't know, and then throw cryptos in there. So for me, financial health is a huge part of taking our control and our power back, right? MLK called it civil rights, not civil, the civil rights. So, we got to talk about making money and how to maintain your wealth and how to build generational wealth. So that's coming out. Hopefully that'll be out by October 25th. I just made that up on the spot, so don't quote me on that. And then, it's my birthday, so I try to put it up film of the year on my birthday. And then we have another one that I'm writing with a brilliant young writer by the name of Jessica Martin. She's so awesome. It's called Highway 86. It's kind of a suspense one. So truthfully, it is our goal in the next 2 years to have a brick and mortar. I can't say that word. I have actual building here in Durham, North Carolina, where we can show our films and other our company's films. But right now, Chapel Hill Black Film Festival. Be a fun one.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. You're getting some nice props in.
Thanks, Alexa.
Yeah. If anyone has any last questions, speak now. We'll hold your peace, or hit up Michael on social or anything like that afterwards. Hey, let's all unmute and just, Michael, thank you again. That was a really heartfelt. That was a fantastic talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
No, thank you all so much. I really thank you for the opportunity.